The NBA this season has been a scoring barrage. We've already had multiple 40-point games this season, a handful of 50-point games, and even a 60-point, 20-rebound, 10-assist triple-double. What can be causing such a surge in scoring this season? Legend of Winning breaks it down for us with this video. The NBA is broken, and it is LeBron's fault. Let's jump into it.
Is a graph conveying how many 40-point games occurred in the NBA on a year-to-year basis since 1955, which is when the shot clock was implemented. This massive spike here is the iconic 1962 season, where Wilt Chamberlain averaged 50 points a game and single-handedly recorded 63 40-point games by himself. But then you can see
and scored 100 points.
Here is the 2006 season, where Kobe famously
That's when Kobe averaged 35
points a game and torched the league night in and night out with 40-point performances.
Was this when he dropped 81, or was that 2004? One of those years. I think it was either that or 2006 when he dropped 81.
That, as you
I don't remember.
Clearly see, over the past 7 years of basketball, there has been a noticeable increase in the frequency of 40-point games that has occurred on a year-to-year basis. Actually, a better way for me to really convey to you how common it is for us to see 40-point games in the NBA over the past few years is for me to show you the top 10 years in which the most 40-point games have occurred. And as you can see, 6 out of the top 10 years have happened within the past 6 seasons. And literally right outside of the top 10
is this current season
this year.
Wow.
With 91 40-point games. Yes, that is correct. We are not even halfway through the regular season, and there's already been 91 40-point outings that the NBA has produced so far. But why is this happening? Since the beginning of the league, there has been one thing that has been constant.
I'm gonna give my thoughts on why it's happening. A lot of people are saying, well, because there's no defense being played anymore. They're not playing defense, of course. No, defense is being played. We have some of the best defenders ever in the NBA right now. It's just, how can I say this? It's kind of like inflation in real life. Like, you look 10, 15 years back. I actually saw this graphic. Who was it? Okay, I was just looking at this and I found it interesting. So look at points per game right here. This is the points per game leader in the 2020-2021 season, I believe. It's AI. Right, 31.4 points per game, and then you can see the numbers down there. They're ranging around the 20, like high 27s, and this is that Kobe Bryant year that Lo was talking about when he averaged 35, then 31. So it's like there has always it was a dip in these two in this season, 27, but there's always been times where there has been a lot of scoring in the NBA. There's been a lot of high point games in the NBA. I feel like just over the years with the talent that's being brought into the NBA, the style of play, the three-point shot being more proficient in the NBA, you know, and then you're in a system where if you have the hot hand, the ball is going to be ran through you every single play. There's never going to be a time where Donovan Mitchell can go off like his 71-point game. Donovan Mitchell, he carried that ball, he held that ball for a majority of the time that, you know, he was on the court. There was never a time when he passed up a shot. They were searching for him. So when a player is having that hot night, when a player is having that hot hand, he is being searched for. And that happened with players like Kobe Bryant. That happened with players like Kevin Durant, LeBron James. But it's happening at a more frequent rate right now just because of the skill that these players have. And it's not like some random Joe is putting up these 40, 50-point games. These are some of the best players in the NBA right now, putting up these 40, 50, 60, 70-point games that we are seeing. It's not like we're seeing Christian Wood put up 40 points. It's not like we're seeing Fred VanVleet put up 50 points. We are seeing the best players. LeBron James has had a 50-point game this season. Luka has had a 50-point game this season. Giannis has had a 50-point game. Like, these are all upper echelon players in the NBA who are playing at such a high level and it's able to score this amount of points because of how talented they are. It has nothing to do with the defense, because a player can score 50 points one night because he had that hot hand, and then the next night he can go for 15, 20 points. It's all about the skill. It's all about how they're feeling that day. It's all about if they're getting to the paint. It's all about if they're creating free throws for each other. Jimmy Butler had 40 points a couple of days ago, but 20 of those points came from the free throw line because he is attacking the basket. So I don't think it's the lack of defense. I just think these players are extremely talented and they are extremely skilled. That's why they're able to put up these high points per game.
That is change. And the significance and frequency of that change can be influenced by a myriad of different reasons. Cultural impact, international play, an overwhelming amount of success, just to name a few, especially that success part. No one was looking for the next MJ until Michael Jordan dominated the entire 90s. And of course, there were some hit or misses along the way, but you kind of get my point. But what is so interesting to me is the amount of change, especially when it comes to scoring, within a finite amount of time. Going back to the 40-point game graph, you can clearly see, even within a 10-year period, there has been a noticeable increase. And just for the people out there who think that I may be overreacting to outlier performances, what about season averages? Back in the day when I was growing up and a young NBA fan, being a 20-point scorer was a coveted title. The reason for this is because there was only 20 to 30 players on a year-to-year basis who were skilled enough to average 20 points by the end of the season. Now, this continued to be the norm all throughout the 2000s. However, in the early 2010s, there was a noticeable decrease in how many players could average 20 points on a year-to-year basis, and that's another video for another day. But since 2015, the number of players continued to increase over and over again. And instead of there only being 20 to 30 players averaging 20 points, it's increased to 30 to 40 different players.
And another reason why I think this is because, how do I say this? Teams are being built top heavy. So you have teams like the Brooklyn Nets. They are built top heavy where 2 or 3 players can average 20 points on that team. Well, when they had James Harden, they're being built top heavy. The Los Angeles Lakers, they tried to be built top heavy with AD, Russ, and LeBron James. They are a top heavy team. Boston Celtics, they're top heavy. They have 2 to 3 players and Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum who can average. Like, these teams are being built top heavy. The only team that I can think of that's not a top heavy team that's actually like deep, they have depth, is the Phoenix Suns, and they're not playing good this year, so I don't even know why I brought them up. But the Phoenix Suns, the only team that I can really think of that's not built top heavy. So that's another thing. You have 2 or 3 guys that can go for 20 points per game, and then you have this, either it's a spot up shooter or a bench spark that's coming off the bench. They can average near 20 points per game. So it's just like the way that teams are built these days, they're not built for a 7th, 8th, 9th man to be in a rotation. They're built for short rotation. They're built for short rotations. They're built for their all-star players to get out there on the court, average 25 plus points per, and then have like the marksmen, the specialists fall into suit and average their 15 to 20 points per game. So that's another reason why I believe that it's been such an increase. And I feel like that's going to be why it's LeBron's fault, because he kind of started that with the Miami Heat, building that Miami Heat team top heavy with LeBron, D Wade, and Chris Bosh. So I feel like that's going to be kind of the reason why he says that it's LeBron's fault. But
until this year, where things really got out of hand. In the year 2023, there are 54 players who are averaging 20 points or better in the NBA. This is insane. 40-point games have become mundane. Video game stat lines have become normal, and every single night the level of scoring and overall production
and 150 to 117, and that's the Boston Celtics is one of the better, if not the best defensive team in the NBA, and they just gave up 150 points to the youngest team in the NBA. It's just skill. It has nothing to do with a lack of defense. It's just skill. These young guys, they're going out there, they have confidence. They know that they're going to lose, so they go out there and play. They go out there and play like, okay, if I make a mistake, then I just make a mistake. That's the same thing with the Utah Jazz. Lauri Markkanen is averaging 25 points per, because if he goes out there and he makes a mistake, they don't have any expectations for that Jazz team. But they're going to go out there and hoop regardless. And that's the same with the OKC Thunder. That's it.
Feels like the NBA is broken. So what's going on? Well, for starters, we have to talk about pace, one of the most overlooked variables when comparing different eras throughout NBA history, yet it is still the most impactful and consistent factor when it comes to measuring scoring from an individual or a team perspective. And honestly, I don't know why people don't bring this up more often when talking about all-time great players. Every bit of information that we have at our hands throughout the 75 years that this league has existed has shown us that the trend of scoring, regardless if it goes up or down, is directly correlated in some way to the pace of the league at that time. And honestly, it makes sense. The higher the pace means that there's more possessions, and with more possessions means that there's more opportunity to score. And looking at the pace back in 1999 to 2009 up into 2019, there is a noticeable difference. And since 2019, the pace has been relatively the same over the past 5 years. However, this can't be the only contributing factor. Matter of fact, it can't even be the biggest contributing factor to explain this scoring explosion that we're witnessing this year, because there have been time periods throughout league history where the pace has been just as fast, if not faster, than what we're witnessing right now. Going back to the 1988 season, where the pace is just as fast as it is in today's game, the amount of field goal attempts are relatively the same. And actually back then, the league average on free throw attempts was 29 times a game, in contrast to where we are today, where it's sub 24 attempts per game. And yet still at that time, the league average in terms of points per game from a team perspective was 108, in contrast to where we are right now, where it's nearly 114. So there has to be something else going on, right? Well, you would be correct, because another major variable to the scoring outbursts are analytics. I know, depending on who you are, that is a big no-no word when having real hoop basketball conversations, but I do believe it's very important for me to bring this up, because regardless of how you feel about analytics, the proof is in the pudding. If we can go back throughout NBA history and find years where the pace and shot attempts are relatively similar to where we are today, but the amount of points that are being scored is drastically different, then that would literally prove that analytics is producing a more efficient way of basketball. The long two-pointers have been replaced with more efficient and productive threes, and the level of volume that we're seeing this year is historic. Nearly 39% of the shots that have been attempted so far this year are three-pointers,
wow.
a noticeable increase from where we just were.
5.7 in the 1997. Oh wait, they didn't. That's the year that they introduced the three-point line. 5.7 threes. Is that per? Oh no, that's 5.7% in 1987, 1988. But that's when they initially introduced it. 2012, 2013. I don't like how you did that number. He should have did 2014, 2015, because that's when Steph really kind of took off. So we can actually see like a jump from like 1987, 1988. It was initially put in there, and then 2014 when it was populated, and then now. But I don't know why he did 2012, 2013.
NBA history, back in the 88 season, roughly 5 to 6% of the shot attempts were three-pointers, then replacing the pull-up mid-range jumpers or even post-up plays with an influx of relentless attacks to the basket has not only removed a lot of the shots within the mid-range area, but also it has increased the two-point percentage in the league to a historic high of 54%. And beyond just
the mid-range is dead.
The free throw percentage is the highest it's been throughout NBA history, which translates to the highest true shooting.
And that's good though. That's a good thing that the mid-range shot is dead, because I'm not going to say it's an inefficient shot, but you can get better shots in the mid-range. Unless you're a mid-range specialist like DeMar DeRozan, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Kobe Bryant, those guys, unless you're a mid-range specialist, you should want to specialize your three-point and your finesse around the rim like Curry does. Curry can knock down the three. He's good with the mid-range, but he's not searching for mid-range shots, and he has finesse around the rim. Even though he's one of the smaller guys on the court, he can get to the paint, throw the ball up, get an and one, get a quick two. That's just the way that he's created his game. That's the way he created how he wants to play. He left that. A lot of teams are leaving that mid-range shot alone, and I don't know when it started. I don't know who said it, but they said that the mid-range is the most inefficient shot you can take. I don't believe it's the most inefficient shot you can take, but you can definitely search for better shots, especially if it's a long two. You might as well just shoot the three at that point. So the mid-range is slowly dying. I wouldn't even say slowly dying. The mid-range is dead. There's only a select few players in the NBA who continuously shoot a mid-range jump shot. If not, they're attacking the paint to either draw fouls or get easy layups, or they're hitting the threes. That's it.
Percentage the league has ever seen as well. And also over the past 4 to 5 years, the turnover rate has been the lowest it's ever been. So yeah, even if you are one of the more purebreded real hoopers out there, or just an old head that gets caught up in nostalgia, the results are pretty undeniable. Another major factor to the scoring boom are rule changes. I know for some of my younger fans out there, you may be in denial about this or just unaware because you weren't watching basketball 20 to 30 years ago. However, it is undeniably true that the league has either changed or adjusted rules to best benefit offense. And in particular, the majority of these rule adjustments have been more perimeter leaning. And this is very important to highlight because when having this discussion, of course, many people are going to compare different eras throughout NBA history. And with rule changes having
a lot of people talk about the help defense thing in the 90s. That's what they bring up to make it seem like that scoring was so much easier in the 90s as you couldn't really help defense on the perimeter. But that's really one of the only rules that I know that people talk about when they talk about how you score back then to how you score now.
Influence on how the game is played, it does not immediately mean that just because player A plays in an era where there's more scoring means that he could go in another era and dominate just as well. There are certain rules that just don't exist anymore that have lifted restrictions and limitations of certain players in the league, especially the ones that play on the perimeter. However, even with all of those reasonable and legitimate variables and factors that I just highlighted, I do believe there is one clear explanation behind this new wave of scoring explosion that has taken over the NBA, especially over the past 2 to 3 years. And that is innovation. A wise man once said, innovation is the unrelentless drive to break the status quo and develop anew where few have dared to go. And when it comes to the NBA, progressive mind states have really taken over the league, the imagery, and how the game of basketball has been played. And in terms of the status quo that has been teared down, well, throughout NBA history, especially throughout the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, there was this belief that individual players had roles and responsibilities based on the position in which they played in. And because of this, identities such as traditional point guards or a true big man started to develop themselves in the NBA culture. But now as time continues to progress, what we're witnessing are some of those roles and responsibilities bleed over from one position to the next, which has led to more well-rounded offensive players in the NBA. And all of that has resulted into a slew of volume scorers who have the capability of also managing an offense with their playmaking and ball handling abilities. Now, to be fair, this playing style has always existed in the NBA, but what ended up occurring when these players started to exercise their full capability offensively is that they were normally chastised and identified as selfish players or ball hogs, and the whole idea of having a volume scorer being able to handle and manage the offense was viewed through a lens in which was not winning style of basketball. But now in today's game, the mentality has shifted and changed, and I think a lot of that has to do with the innovation that LeBron brought to the table. Early in Bron's career, not only did he display a feel for the game that made him an exquisite passer,
oh my goodness,
complemented that skill set with a level of volume.
That was nice. That was nice.
Impossible to defend. And unlike many of his predecessors, the level of success that he has seen throughout his career, in particular between 2007 and 2016, was so astonishing that it had to be duplicated in the upcoming era. And so now this philosophy is so openly accepted that we even give it a name. We talked about this in my last video, the heliocentric star, where you have one individual who has a significant amount of influence on his team's offense. Now, what does all of this have to do with what we're talking about? Well, in today's game, because this ideology is much more openly accepted, what's starting to happen is that you have these players who've practically always existed in NBA history, the ones who can go for a 20, 30, or even 40 on any given night, now have the ability to initiate the offense. So instead of the game slowing down, teams running sets that put their best offensive player in positions to score the basketball, that player is bringing the ball up and is immediately a threat to score as soon as he crosses the half-court line. And the numbers back this up as well. The amount of players who have a usage rating of 30 or higher is at an all-time high. Also, with volume scoring players having the ball in their hands more predominantly, players having the ability to average 20 or 25 points while still contributing 5 or more assists is at an all-time high as well. Out of those 54 players who are averaging 20 or better, 26 of them are averaging 5 assists or more. How astonishing is that? Well, between 1985 to 1995, there were only 24 players who had the ability to average 20 points and 5 assists within at least one season. So yeah, within an entire decade between the 80s and 90s, there are fewer players who have the capability of being a 20 and 5 player than there are in today's league. Now, of course, people want to bring up other aspects, and I do believe there's some validity to some of the concerns that you may bring up in the comment section below, such as the league being more perimeter oriented. That is true, and that certainly contributes to what I'm talking about. However, when you look at big men as well, their ability to handle and initiate offenses has increased also. Giannis, Jokic, Zion, Domantas Sabonis, just to name a few. But then you even have players such as Joel Embiid, Karl-Anthony Towns, and Pascal Siakam this year, all having career highs in assist totals. I know many people are going to highlight the analytics aspect of it, and that is true. Getting threes over twos certainly helps. However, there are certain players in today's game who don't shoot that many threes, such as Kawhi Leonard and Kevin Durant, who still are having some of the greatest scoring seasons of their entire career. And as I say that, I also do not believe that it's a coincidence that we're starting to see an increased role in ball handling responsibilities with KD and Kawhi. FYI, their assist numbers are also going up as well. And even to a more extreme example, we have someone like DeMar DeRozan, who doesn't shoot threes, and when he doesn't make them at any respectable clip, and yet still he has the ability to have some of the greatest scoring seasons of his career over the past 3 to 4 years. And once again, it's not coincidental that his responsibility as a ball handler and playmaker has increased alongside with his assist totals. And oh yeah, be very mindful that those 3 examples that I just gave you, they've been in the NBA for several years now. So we can look at what they once were back in their earlier years, compare them to where they are right now, and it is undeniable what the influence of someone like LeBron has had on this league. The level, the standard, and expectations that come along with being a volume scorer is at an all-time high, which has produced much more well-rounded offensive pieces. And instead of having someone set them up, volume scorers now have a direct impact on the game, which gives them more opportunities to score. And I do believe that is a major contributing factor to yielding these type of results.
All right, so that's it with that video. Well, he always, you know, I wouldn't say always spit facts, but he spit facts right here. And I feel like this is something that's going to continue to happen in the next 10 to 15 years, because we have players like Victor Wembanyama coming in, Chet Holmgren. We have these athletic 4 and 7 foot tall players who can stretch the floor, who can dribble, penetrate, who can step back three, who can, you know, facilitate the ball. I feel like in the next coming years, scoring is only going to get higher and higher. The game is going to change so much in the next 10 to 15 years, and I just can't wait. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, feel free to hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and share, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Peace out.